Happy New Year, and welcome to Adapter Parish, episode 33, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. As always, before we dive in, let's talk about our next installment. In 2 weeks, on Tuesday, January 15th, we're tapping a source that we've yet to tackle on our show, William Shakespeare. And what better way to open that can of worms than with the tragic tale of a pair of star-crossed lovers who absolutely don't die and live happily ever after. We watched no less than 5 screen versions of Romeo and Juliet as early as 1936 and as late as 2013. We can't wait for you to hear it. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections that you'd like to hear on the show, remember to email adapterparishcast@gmail.com or tweet at us using the AdaptCast hashtag. And with that, on with the show. C.S. Lewis's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Welcome to Adapter Parish, a podcast about adaptation. My name is Jeremy Latour.
And I'm Arielle Lipshaw. How are you doing today?
I'm great.
Are you?
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year
and
to
Merry
you.
Christmas. Merry Christmas. We've brought
It's
you a
Father Christmas.
We've brought you a wonderful episode as well as weapons. Just an array of weapons to do battle with.
I'm Santa.
Totally.
What are we talking about today?
Well, we're talking about C.S. Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia, Book 2, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
There it is.
So this was something that I know you've been wanting to do for a while now.
Yes, and you were like, I don't want it. And I was like, no, we're going to do it. It's going to be a New Year's Day episode. You jerk.
So as Jews, we have so far on this show done Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol.
We have.
Which is weird because that's a Christmas Carol, but there's like way less Jesus in it.
No, it's more like the reason for the season.
Yeah.
It's more like the goodwill in the hearts of all mankind.
Which is kind of why I was totally fine doing it.
Yeah.
I felt like I had something to say. But Chronicles of Narnia has always been a little weird for me to do on this show because I don't know how much I'm bringing to the table.
But I think that's fine. Where it's an outside perspective.
I hope so.
On the Jesus story.
Right.
Yes. So this may get a little irreverent.
I would love for the one person that doesn't know that the lion is
there's
Jesus.
There's one person going, oh.
Okay, that makes sense. Because of this and this and this.
That's right. That's right. So for those who perhaps don't know, we should talk about what this book is about. And we have here a paperback copy of C.S. Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia.
How long did it take you to pick out this copy of it?
It took me a long time because I wanted a very specific version that I could not find.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was like sort of my second choice. It's like the paperback that you would have had at school. I think this is the one that was like in the school library. The one that we had was like a boxed set, and they were like gold. They were very small paperbacks, and they were like gold covers. And I found that one for, I think, Prince Caspian in the half-price bookstore that we went to. But so this was like my second choice. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Go ahead and read the back of the book.
All right. Narnia. Hang on. It's all caps. Narnia.
You're saying Narnia weird.
Narnia?
You're saying it with 2 syllables. It's Narnia.
Narnia?
Yeah.
Narnia.
You're saying Narnia. You're saying 2 syllables, Narnia. But it is Narnia.
Well, technically it isn't anything because it's super made up.
I've never heard anyone say it the way you're saying it.
The Chronicles of Narnia.
Narnia.
All right, I'm not changing. I'm at the point now where I don't care.
Great.
All caps. Narnia. The land beyond the wardrobe, the secret country known only to Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy, the place where the adventure begins. Lucy is the first to find the secret of the wardrobe in the professor's mysterious old house. At first, no one believes her when she tells of her adventures in the land of Nana. But soon, Edmund and then Peter and Susan discover the magic and meet Aslan, the great lion, for themselves. In the blink of an eye, their lives are changed forever.
All right.
It's okay. It like gets you started.
It gets you started.
Yeah.
It's all right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I have some very specific memories of this from when I was a kid. I was very into The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, this book. I don't believe I ever read any of the other books, or at least not a lot.
Which is really funny because I read all of them.
Yeah. So I have a couple of very strong memories. One is my mom reading this book to me, which is funny because I think I was an independent reader very, very young. So I don't have a lot of memories of like my mom reading books to me. But there's a scene where so when Lucy goes into the wardrobe for the first time, there's a line about how she didn't shut the door behind her because it's very foolish. Everyone knows it's very foolish to shut yourself into a wardrobe. And it's repeated like twice. And then Edmund does shut the door behind him.
Because Edmund's a piece of shit.
Because Edmund's a piece of shit. And the author reminds us, the audience, Edmund was very foolish because, of course, it's very foolish to shut yourself into a wardrobe.
Right.
But I just remember reading that with my mom and both of us thinking that was really funny, like laughing at that line that was repeated. And I feel like it was a basis for some of my sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's funny. Anyway, but the other major thing that I have to talk about is when I was 10 years old, when I was in 5th grade, I participated in a play at a local church called Narnia. And if you go to YouTube and you look for like Narnia musical, you can definitely find this is a published, established play. So it wasn't called The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It was just called Narnia. I have several memories of this. One was the audition because it was a musical. Everyone was asked to sing, but we weren't asked to prepare a song. They just had everybody sing the same song. But when we got there, they said, okay, children, everyone is just going to come up and sing Amazing Grace. And I looked at my mom and I went, I don't know that song.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Where was this production being put on again?
A church.
Okay.
A local church.
Right.
Yes.
A Christian church.
Yes, a Christian church. But auditions were open to all.
Yeah, totally.
It was not like a church play.
Mhm.
It just happened to be the church had like a stage and they did plays sometimes. And my mom turns to the director and goes, well, they don't teach that one in Hebrew school.
It's a good one.
Yeah, it was great. I don't remember. I think they had me sing Happy Birthday or something instead. So I was already singled
When it
out.
got to the name, what name did they make you say?
I don't remember.
Was it Jesus?
Probably.
Okay.
But the cool thing that I just remember to this day was that so this was not like a children's play. It had adults and children in it, adults playing adults and children playing children. And I other than the 4 like Pevensie children, I was the only child in like a main role because I played the White Witch's dwarf.
Ah, yes.
And it was very special and very cool. And I got to sing a bunch of songs. I got to sing Turkish Delight. And I got to sing a song called Murder Today. Anyway, it was good. It was really fun.
I'll see if I can link to it.
Yeah.
Well, my experience of it was a little bit different. I read them all and I watched the BBC show and that was kind of it.
That was it.
And I felt like I outgrew it very quickly.
Yes.
It was not a thing for me. It was just not something I was very passionate about for a very long time.
Right.
And that basically leads us to today.
Okay, so I have here this book. It's not very long. It's like 200 pages, a small paperback. Let's go through like who the characters are and basically what happens.
Yep.
So we start off, we have 4 children.
Mm-hmm.
Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy, in that order of age,
Right.
oldest to youngest. And they have been evacuated from London because it's World War II and it's the Blitz.
And they're blitzing.
They're being blitzed. So they go to live with this professor in this big old country house. And in the process of exploring the house, as children do, they find this wardrobe. Why are you laughing?
Just imagine someone at home who doesn't know this story go, I see, 4 children, you say, and they live with a professor. In a country home, you say.
So
I appreciate you being thorough.
I am nothing if not thorough. So the first person to go in is Lucy. She meets a faun named Tumnus and learns all about the world that she finds herself in. Oh, I'm sorry. I totally skipped an important part of the plot. When she goes into the wardrobe, there's a magical world that you can get to by walking through the wardrobe, in case that was not immediately clear.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes into this world and meets a magical creature, a faun named Mr. Tumnus. Well, his name is Tumnus. She calls him Mr. Tumnus, which is very sweet. And she learns all about the curse that is laid on the land of Narnia, where it is always winter and never Christmas. So just like our childhoods in Maine and Michigan as Jewish children. So the curse has been laid upon this land by Jadis the White Witch. She is the queen of all Narnia.
She says.
She says. Well, we find out later.
Mm-hmm.
And when Lucy tells her sister and brothers, of course, nobody believes her, and they think she's just been pretending because she was only in the wardrobe for 30 seconds, and she thinks she was there all day. And a bunch of stuff happens.
We're on page 10 so
We're
far.
on page 10. Eventually, they all make their way into Narnia, but Edmund is a bad child, and he goes off and joins the White Witch.
Mm-hmm.
Is it important to understand the details of how that happens?
Not really.
Okay.
No. Okay. Oh, the only thing I want to say about that whole thing is like fucking Turkish Delight.
Yeah.
So when I was a kid and I read this book, I think this is an experience that many people have had, is you read this and you go, wow, Turkish Delight is A, something I've never had before, and B, sounds fucking delicious.
Sounds amazing.
Sounds so good.
It's disgusting.
It is the worst thing in the world.
It's rose flavored.
That's a stupid flavor for a candy.
Well, I mean, you have to remember these were like children during wartime. They probably didn't get any candy. But why didn't he ask for chocolate? Like, he's got to know what chocolate is.
It doesn't make any sense.
I don't understand.
It's never made any sense.
You know what always sounded even better to me than the Turkish Delight was like the hot drink that she makes him. Because remember, she
that
makes
sounds
him.
great.
She makes him like Turkish Delight, which is what he asks for, and then she says, "Oh, you'd probably like a drink as well." And like he doesn't even describe the taste of it, but it just sounds amazing.
It's probably alcohol.
It's probably alcohol.
It's like a hot toddy. I think she gives him a hot toddy.
If you remember, they also do have alcohol when they're with the beavers.
Mm-hmm.
When they're on the run and they're in like the beaver's hidey hole, because it's like Mr. Beaver took out a flask and passed it around and everyone took a sip and it was something very warm and burned, but everyone felt great afterwards and went immediately to sleep.
We're learning a lot about C.S. Lewis.
Yeah, well,
but
we
anyway,
went to a pub where he used to drink.
That's true.
We had a beer in it. It was not impressive.
Did he used to drink there with anyone else in particular?
Yes, he used to drink there with his buddy who was also into world building, a guy named J.R.R. Tolkien.
Tolkien?
Yeah.
Tolkien.
Tolkien. Yes.
Interesting.
Jeremy spent the last week rewatching the Lord of the Rings extended edition trilogy, so we're like 18 hours into the Lord of the Rings at this point.
I've been spending a lot of time in the last couple of weeks in fantasy worlds.
Yes.
So skipping ahead a little bit.
Yeah.
Tell me, I feel like there is one other big character who we haven't mentioned yet.
Big, you say?
Very big.
Yes.
Very big, very furry.
Yeah.
I bet he's adorable.
I bet he smells.
Yeah, probably. He's a lion. Of course he smells.
His name is Aslan and he's a lion, but actually he's Jesus.
Yes.
That's really what we're trying to say.
And he is like...
He's the Jesus lion.
It's never really 100% clear who he is. He's someone that all of Narnia, like... looks up to.
Yeah.
And he is the king, and all the people in Narnia, they're all animals. Like, that's the other thing. There's no people in Narnia. There's no quote unquote, there's no men.
Right.
Nor women.
They're sons of Adam and daughters of Eve.
Oh, sons of Adam and daughters. So we know it's always winter and never Christmas.
Yes.
And humans are referred to as sons of Adam and daughters of Eve.
That is correct.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Just making sure.
But the White Witch, although she appears human, is actually a giant. Part giant.
She is?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I remember that.
Yeah, she's part giant and part, like, demon.
Ah, yes.
Yes.
Oh, of course.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Ah, yes. So Aslan is like the big guy.
The big guy, yeah.
And everyone looks up to him.
Yes.
And what happens to Aslan?
He trades his life for that of a traitor.
Oh.
Who is Edmund.
Edmund.
Yes.
Who
is a bad child.
What was Edmund's great sin?
He betrayed his siblings to the White Witch and almost got them all killed.
Ah, and so what's she going to do to Edmund?
Oh, she's going to kill him.
Because he
was a traitor.
He did this bad thing.
Yes, that she told him to do.
Okay, but so Aslan dies instead?
Yes.
So Aslan gives his own life for this.
Yes, because of the magic, you see.
Oh, okay, the magic.
Yes.
Right. So Aslan, what happens to him?
He dies for a little bit.
Like just quickly? It's like quick and painless?
No, he's like murdered bloodily.
Oh.
And like humiliated.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
In front of like one or two people.
In front of a bunch of people.
Like a whole crowd of angry people?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he is alive.
Oh, he's not dead forever after that?
No, because the mice come and they eat his bindings.
Well, I feel like that's incidental.
Well, I don't know. I honestly, genuinely don't know what that represents. That may represent something or perhaps not. I don't know much about Jesus.
I feel like that's... So I just want to get this out of the way. I have a really big problem with these books.
Okay.
I just want to at least start talking about it now so that when I talk about it later, we're all on the same page about this. I want to be very clear about something. I have a really big problem with these books regarding the Christianity in them.
Okay.
But my really big problem is not that there's Christianity in them,
Okay.
because that's how creativity happens.
Okay.
Like creativity, authors bring their life to their work, and anything should be able to inspire an author. I have no problem with that whatsoever.
But
because we mentioned Tolkien before, he was also a devout Catholic.
yes.
I say also a devout Catholic. He was a devout Catholic. He basically befriended C.S. Lewis, who was kind of a lapsed Christian, and brought him back to the church.
Oh, did he now?
Yeah, but C.S. Lewis became a Protestant.
Oh, no.
And so they actually had a lot of problems with each other over that. They disagreed greatly
goodness.
over the manner of Christianity that they
Oh,
believed
God.
in.
Anyway,
So Tolkien was also a devout Christian, and he brought a lot of his Christianity to the Middle Earth books.
yes.
But here's my problem. My problem isn't the presence of it. My problem is how overt it is.
Yeah. Well, when we were watching these movies, Jeremy kept going, "Oh my God, could you be more literal?" And I was like, "Babe, but that's the story. Like, that's the story." And he was like, "Yeah, but this is my whole problem." That was basically our conversation.
It's a really shitty impression of me.
I'm very sorry.
Maybe I sounded like that.
A little bit.
I hope I don't sound like that now.
No, you sound great.
No, the thing that I realized, I could never really articulate what my individual problem with this world is. And this is what it really comes down to. As someone who does not share the philosophy of C.S. Lewis, of the author, I always felt like these books were pushing me away.
I see.
These books were not for me. And they're constantly, throughout the books, reminding me that I'm not the audience for these books. And so even if I am getting something out of them, suddenly something will happen and say like, oh yeah, but this book's not for you.
Yeah.
So like Sons of Adam and Daughters of Eve, like this automatically assumes that you are either Jewish or Christian, like that the Adam and Eve, the story of Genesis, this is something that's part of you, because if it isn't,
It's not explained.
yeah, it assumes that.
Right.
And it's in a kid's book when they say, well, it's always winter and never Christmas. Well, that line makes the assumption that the child reading the book celebrates Christmas because it's presented as something bad.
Right.
Whereas like for a Jewish kid,
Like, it's never Christmas.
like, okay, every winter for me is never Christmas.
As I said before.
Yeah. The allegory is so clear that I'm not free to get something out of it myself because I'm not in the circle of people that these books are written for.
You can't take... Many books are written in such a way that you can take away whatever is meaningful to you. But in this case, the author is saying, this is the thing that you are to take away from this because it's meaningful to me, and you are not to take anything else away from it. I am preventing you from doing so.
Right.
Right.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And that was a big problem for Tolkien. Like, they fought over these. That's the crazy thing, the timeline that I found out. So they wrote Narnia and Lord of the Rings kind of around the same time.
Uh-huh.
How long do you know how long it took C.S. Lewis to write all 7 of these books?
Probably not as long as it took.
It took like 7 years.
Okay.
How long did it take Tolkien to write The Lord of the Rings?
Oh, my understanding is like 20 years.
It was like 17 years.
Yeah.
And Tolkien, like, they were friends.
Yeah.
But Tolkien did not care for the Narnia books at all. And his problem was similar to my problem, which is you're making the allegory. You're making it allegory, and Tolkien hated allegory.
Right.
You're making it so overt that it's very clear what you're doing. It's very clear that what you're bringing to this. And that was one of the reasons I just went through and kind of rewatched Lord of the Rings, is because, yeah, there's like Gandalf dies.
Yeah.
And he comes back to life.
Yeah.
But the similarities kind of end there.
Right.
It's not like there's one character that exhibits all of the different characteristics of another character, Jesus.
Right.
You can see elements of that figure in lots of different characters in The Lord of the Rings because it's not allegory.
Right.
It's just inspired by that.
Yeah.
So I just want to be really clear. My problem is not that it's in there. My problem is it's the only thing that's in there.
Right. Well, we'll come back to this when we talk about the 2005 movie because I feel like you had a little bit of a revelation
A bit.
A bit.
A bit.
A bit. A bit. Okay.
Sorry, back to the book.
Back to the book.
So Aslan dies, he comes back to life.
He comes back to life. He forgives Edmund for his treacherous behavior, and Edmund is saved.
Yes.
Right? He's a good boy.
Yep.
From then on.
Aslan tells them he knows what he did. Don't ever speak of any of it again.
Yeah, which is, of course, as we all know, the best way to combat trauma.
Which is really funny because that's super Catholic.
Yeah.
Like that to me
Is it?
sounds very Catholic. This kind of
You've been forgiven. You don't need to talk about it anymore.
Exactly. And see, Lewis wasn't the Catholic.
Yeah, interesting.
I actually would love to hear if anybody has like specifically a Catholic perspective or a Protestant perspective of this book. I would actually really love to hear that.
Yeah, that is a subtlety that is going to elude us, I think.
I've been reading up a lot on it, and it's been very interesting. Anyway, I'm so sorry. Back to the story.
Anyway, back to the story. So Aslan dies, comes back to life. The children, so they have defeated now the White Queen. Aslan has killed her. She's died.
Yeah, there's a whole battle.
There's a battle. There's a giant battle between good and evil.
Do they all fight?
A literal battle between good and evil. No, just the men.
Just the men?
Just the
what
men.
do they fight with, by the way?
Swords?
Like weapons?
Yeah, weapons.
And who gave them those weapons?
Oh, Santa.
Santa shows up, and he gives them weapons.
Yes. And
because does he give them all weapons?
No, just the boys. No, that's not true. He gives Susan bow and arrow.
Oh, does he tell her to, like, you know, fuck up some orcs with it?
No, he says
shit?
it is only to be used in self-defense.
Why?
Because battles are ugly when women fight.
Oh, that's fun.
Yep.
Cool.
Just lay that out there.
Cool.
Yep.
So there's a big battle, and
There's a big
Aslan
battle.
kills the witch.
He does, and they all become kings and queens of Narnia because there was a prophecy, you see, that two sons of there's oh god, we have to go so far back. There's a castle called Cair Paravel. There's 4 thrones, 4 empty thrones, and the prophecy stated that 2 sons of Adam and 2 daughters of Eve would rule Narnia and sit on those thrones. So these children are the coming of the prophecy, you see.
Right. It's the butts and seats prophecy.
Pretty much, yeah. And so they become the rulers. They rule the land for many years. They become adults, and they start to talk like Lancelot.
I want to read this really quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
Then said King Peter, for they talked in quite a different style now, having been kings and queens for so long. Fair consorts, let us now alight from our horses and follow this beast into the thicket, for in all my days I never hunted a nobler quarry. Sir, said the others, even so let us do.
It's a little stupid.
I actually think it's kind of cute. I have no problem with this part.
So anyway, they're doing this.
They're hunting a white stag?
The white stag.
Yeah.
Yeah, the white stag. And then they find the lamppost again, which we didn't mention before, but there's a lamppost.
That's fine.
And they go back accidentally through the wardrobe, and they are their little kid selves again, and they're back right where they left off. And then they go to the professor, and they say, this crazy thing happened to us. And he's like, yes.
And now they talked to the professor earlier in the book too, because Susan and Peter went to him because Lucy was saying all these things about going to this
magical land. And they thought
land.
she was crazy.
Right.
And he was like, how do you know she didn't go? And they were like, because it does not exist.
Well,
and he was like, how do you know, children?
And they're like, we were unprepared for you to take this position in this conversation.
That's right. He tells them that you will get back to Narnia again someday. It'll happen when you least expect it, and that wardrobe is very unlikely to work again. And indeed, it does not.
And indeed, they do.
But that's for another story. Yes.
Yeah, we won't be covering Prince Caspian or the Voyage of the Dawn Treader.
I mean, not in this podcast.
Yeah, no, not today.
Not today.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so that's the end of the book.
Not
today. Okay, so that's the end of the book.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything else to say about the book before we move on to the movie and TV and filmic adaptations?
Yes.
Okay.
I enjoyed reading the book.
I also enjoyed reading the book.
Like, after all of that stuff, after all of that yelling that I just went through.
It was a lot.
Like, I basically spent 20 years kind of working myself up into a frenzy over this book. And then I read it and was like, oh, yeah, it's in there. But it's a cute book.
Yeah.
It's a cute book. Here's my biggest problem with the book.
Yeah.
My biggest problem with the book are the, like, quote-unquote characters of Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy. Because they're not like deep characters. They're not very well rounded.
Well,
like Peter and Susan are just white bread. Edmund is a sinner and Lucy is a tiny child.
Yeah.
And that's kind of their characters.
That's fair.
So like Peter and Susan are in charge because they're the oldest.
Right.
But they don't really exhibit anything that they should for being in charge.
Well, I think you were talking about them at the beginning of the book. I do think the children sort of grow and change throughout the book, because the whole thing is that Peter like learns to be a leader and like wins the battle.
Yeah, but we don't even really see the battle in the book.
Okay.
Like I actually respectfully disagree.
All right. That's fine.
I think the arc that you're talking about is something that we've seen from all of these adaptations over the years.
Okay.
I don't really think it's in the book.
All right. That's fair. That's fair.
Mhm.
Okay.
Do you want to just jump straight to our first adaptation?
Yes. All right. Do
The
you want
most
to talk
major
about this?
adaptation, the most famed adaptation of this.
This is not correct.
In 1979, they made a cartoon.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It's weird. So it's directed by Bill Melendez, which some people might recognize from the Peanuts. He directed all of the Peanuts cartoons in like the 70s. It was on TV. It won like an Emmy.
Did it?
Yeah, it was award winning.
Okay.
It is I had a really weird experience watching it because the entire time we're watching it, I'm going like, I've never seen this before.
Yeah.
I've never seen
And
this.
I'm saying, yes. And I was saying to you, you have seen it. You have seen it. You would have seen it at some point. And then like, what was the moment that you were like, oh, I've seen this?
There were two moments.
Yeah.
No, sorry. There were three things that happened that made me go, oh, like I didn't even say, oh, yes, I've 100% seen it and remember the whole thing. They just made me go, oh, no, I know I've seen it because I remember those three things.
Yeah.
So here are the three things. At one point, the White Witch, Jadis, and her dwarf, they get attacked in the middle of the night by the good guys, but they can't get them and they leave. And you see like a dead tree and a stump. And then suddenly the dead tree and the stump turn into the witch and the dwarf.
Yes.
Because she used her magical powers to hide them.
That's correct.
And I remembered that vividly.
Yes.
Then later, when Aslan dies, like the image of him with a big muzzle on, they put a muzzle on him and they shave his hair.
Because he's a lion. Let us not forget.
Right.
Yeah.
I 100% remember that too.
Okay.
And then finally, so he's come back to life and the battle is happening. But so one of the things that Jadis can do is turn people to stone.
Right.
And that comes up multiple times. And she's turned many, many creatures in Narnia to stone. They go, while the battle is happening and she's fighting, Aslan has the two girls and they go to Jadis's castle.
Her house.
And there are all of these stone creatures and he breathes on all of them and brings them back to life.
That's correct.
And the way it's animated, like he breathes on them and then they turn kind of to silhouettes of this very like crystal kind of thing.
Yeah, it looks like
a kaleidoscope.
Yeah, it looks like they're in Star Trek and they're being transported.
Yes, to the exact same spot.
Yes.
But as people.
Yes.
That I also remembered vividly.
Yes.
Still don't remember anything else that happens in it.
Well, that's
at
fine.
all.
I mean, you could have seen this when you were 5. Like this came out in 1979. Like you could have seen it a very long time ago.
Yes.
The thing that I enjoyed about this, well, not enjoyed. The thing I thought was not good about this. They didn't provide any context for why the children were there at the professor's house.
Yeah.
I think there was like one line at the beginning which is like, well, now that we're staying with the professor, and I think they did it on purpose to not set it in any time because it was definitely, from the clothing, it was the 70s.
Oh, they look like
the Brady Bunch.
I was going to say they look like the Scooby-Doo gang.
Yeah. I wrote down they look like the Brady Bunch.
Yeah, there's like a lot of sweaters with big collars and bell bottoms.
Well, that's the funny thing because the outfit that Susan is wearing is like a red jumper dress with a white shirt underneath with like a white collar, and that is absolutely the outfit I always picture Susan wearing in whenever I think of this. But of course, that's not correct. Like it's very 70s.
Yeah.
She looks like Marsha Brady.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought like it seems like they were trying to
It's actually pronounced Marcia.
Okay.
It's 3 syllables.
Okay. It seems like the filmmakers were trying to not very like actively trying to not set it anywhere in time, but by doing so they set it very firmly in 1979.
Mm-hmm. It's timeless.
Yeah. And I just thought, go ahead.
Can you say one quick thing? They also were trying not to set it in any particular place.
Right.
Because there's a British version and an American version.
But the American version still has British accents, so I don't understand.
For some of the characters.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah, but like the kids, I think, are American in the American version. I've never seen it. But we only watched the British one.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just, so like, I mean, how long was this? Like 90 minutes? It was long.
I think it's more than 90 minutes.
For a cartoon, it was long.
Yeah.
And just the choices that they made about some of the storytelling was very weird. Like at the beginning, like when Lucy goes into wardrobe for the first time, she then like comes back out and has a flashback. And it's like, why do you need a flashback for something that happened 5 minutes ago? Like, just show the thing that happened.
Well, no, doesn't the whole thing start with her going into the wardrobe?
I think
like
I think so.
Yeah, the whole movie starts with her in the wardrobe suddenly.
Yeah.
And so we haven't met any of her siblings. We just meet Lucy, and she meets Tumnus, and then comes out, and then we get a flashback to them all arriving at the house.
That's right. I think that's right.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
So there's no context for who she is or why she's even there.
Full disclosure, the only thing that I wrote down was, why do we need a flashback for something that happened 5 minutes ago? So clearly I felt strongly about this, but I don't remember too specifically what I was responding to.
And it's weird because it's such a strong decision to make.
Yeah.
Like a structural decision, but it doesn't do anything.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is, like, this was not very good, but animation is kind of the natural medium for this type of story, because if it's not animated and they don't have good technology, we get the thing that we're about to talk about, which is just you have humans and animals trying to talk to each other, and how does that actually work? Right? And if it's just 100% live action and you don't have good technology for making talking animals look like animals, it's gonna look very strange.
We'll get to that in a minute.
We'll get to that in a minute. Yeah, do you have anything else to say about the cartoon? I don't have a lot else to say.
Well, there is one. I think it is time to talk about Sir not appearing in this film.
Oh, that's great.
Because as a kid's book, like this has come up before, it's not very long and there's not a ton of characters. So when you'd make a movie or a miniseries, it's really easy to have every single character. And usually we don't have people who don't appear. Usually we just add characters.
That's right.
In the cartoon, however, there is a Sir not appearing in this film.
Go ahead.
My nominee, Father Christmas himself,
oh boy,
does not appear in this cartoon.
Which is funny because, like, it is very bizarre and random how this happens in the book. Basically, they're all on the run from the White Witch with the Beavers, who we have not discussed yet, Mr. and Mrs. Beaver.
No, you discussed how they gave them alcohol to put them to sleep.
That's right. So they've made friends with these beavers.
These two adults that are bad influences.
They're beavers.
Yep.
Oh my God, I have to stop saying beaver. It's awful. It's just like one of those words that starts to not sound like a word anymore if you say it too many times.
Anyway, so they're with the Beavers.
Oh God,
Mr. Beaver and Mrs. Beaver.
This is correct, and they're on the run from the White Witch because they know that she's after them because Edmund has snuck away from their family party and gone to tell the White Witch where they are. That they're in Narnia and they're with the Beavers and she's coming to get them. Because basically, I think we've not been explicitly clear about this. The White Witch wants to kill the children because she knows about the prophecy and she does not want that prophecy to be fulfilled because, of course, if it is fulfilled, she will no longer be Queen of Narnia and also will probably die.
Yes.
So she has a vested interest in making these 4 children dead. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
She really needs to kill just one of them, but I think she's trying to be thorough.
She's trying to be thorough. So they know they have to leave, so they've escaped Mr. and Mrs. Beaver's house, and they're hiding in like a beaver hiding place. And they hear the sound of sleigh bells. And we actually, it's interesting dramatic irony, because we, the audience, know it can't be the White Witch, because the White Witch has specifically said when she's calling her servants and everyone to set up her sleigh, she says, use the harness without bells, so they don't know we're coming. But they hear sleigh bells, and Mr. Beaver goes up to look, and they're all freaking out because they think the witch has caught them. And he comes back down and he says, children, it's all right, come see. And they come up, and there is Santa.
Yep.
On his sleigh,
Action Santa,
with his reindeer
and his bag of weapons.
So he gives all 4 children,
all 3.
I'm so sorry,
Edmund never gets anything from Santa because he's a sinful little child.
Yes, he does not. He gets a sack of coal in his stocking.
Yep.
He gives Peter a sword
and a shield
because he's going to fight in the battle.
Right.
He gives Susan a bow and arrow and a horn to blow if she is in danger. And the bow and arrow, I guess, is for self-defense.
Yeah.
And he gives Lucy a magic potion, which will heal anyone who's hurt or sick.
Right.
And a dagger. Right. And she says, oh, a dagger. I'm going to fight in the battle. Yes, I surely am. And he says, you are not. And she says, this is a really sweet line. She says, well, and this is, Lucy's tiny. Lucy's a little girl. She says, well, I think I could be brave enough. And he says, that is not the problem. All right, I'm gonna read this out.
Okay.
The he in this is referring to Father Christmas, Santa. He says, The dagger is to defend yourself at great need, for you also are not to be in the battle. Why, sir, said Lucy. I don't know, but I think I could be brave enough. That is not the point, he said, but battles are ugly when women fight.
Super cool.
And then he gives everybody tea, and then he cries out, Merry Christmas, long live the true king. And king is capitalized.
Right.
It's very Jesus-y.
Yep.
And in the 1979 version, they've, as you say, gotten rid of Father Christmas. So Aslan actually gives them all their presents. And so Aslan gets to say the line to Lucy, battles are ugly when women fight, which is very unfortunate and makes me sad.
But anyway, Father Christmas is my nominee for Sir not appearing in this film.
Great. Seconded.
Cool.
Yes. Hooray.
We have a winner.
Yay.
Great. Yeah. How much else do you have to say about this cartoon?
No, it did not make too much of an impression upon me.
Didn't do it for me.
Didn't do it for me. Was not great.
It's one of those weird things where it is not very long, but feels way longer than it is.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to watch it, it was on YouTube.
Mhm.
It was free, so you feel free. But it's not great.
It just feels so long.
It was 90 minutes. It was 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Anyway,
it's okay.
so speaking of something that was quite long but more enjoyable,
Yes.
1988. This is the one that people will have seen.
Mhm.
Like, this is the one that people who are our age will 100% remember from their childhoods.
Right.
Because this would have been like on PBS in the late 80s, early 90s. And this is it's the BBC, but to us, it's a PBS version
Right.
of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Mhm.
So the thing that I remembered from this, like I have 100% seen it many times, was the Crazy Beaver costumes. And I remembered like something about Lucy's appearance was strange. That was my memory.
Uh-huh.
And now looking at it, I am actually really impressed by it because they cast actors who were good actors. And Lucy doesn't look like a child actor would look today. She's kind of a chubby kid with an overbite, but she's a really good actor.
Mhm.
And I just think it's interesting that they were like, no, she doesn't need to be a beautiful little girl. She needs to be like really spunky and smart and good at acting.
Mhm.
And I appreciate that.
So as far as adaptations goes, this is super faithful.
Oh yeah.
Like beginning to end,
Like
really,
almost
really faithful.
too faithful.
And I feel like that is a risk that you run
Yes.
with these types of BBC adaptations. And I think, I don't know, maybe that says something about the source material, that if you are 100% faithful to it, it turns out being a little bit flawed.
Yeah, although my first note is I like the added dialogue, which I think is a reference to at the beginning. They take the care to actually set the scene a little bit better than just saying like a throwaway line like, oh, we're here. Like there's an interaction with the professor and with the housekeeper who's mean, and the kids all sitting down like talking about like where they are and what they're doing. Like they do take the care in the script to set the scene really well in a way that the book doesn't do.
Well, we also see them leaving London, don't we?
No, that's in the new one.
That's not at all in the BBC one?
I don't think so.
With them like getting on the train?
No, I'm sorry, you're right. There's not as much, but there is a scene with them on the train.
Yes.
Yes.
So we know they're leaving London because of the Blitz.
Yes, that's right.
Like that is clear at least. And that's something like that, to be fair, like in the book, you never see that. You hear it.
Right.
But nothing ever happens that's during that time.
Yeah. And it's expanded on even more in the 2005 movie, which I
Yeah.
think was why I was confused.
Right.
But yeah.
But no, it's very long.
Yeah.
It's very,
Well,
very long.
it's a mini series. So it's like, what was it, like 2.5 hour or 3 hour sections? How long was it?
So it's like 6 half-hour episodes.
Okay. I think the one we were watching didn't break it up into as small segments as that.
No, but like you can definitely tell where some of the act breaks are.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about the non-human characters for a minute.
Because I was about to say, do you want to talk about what doesn't work before we talk about what works?
Yes. Yes.
And this is a mixed bag.
It is a mixed bag.
Right.
Okay. So the two major non-human characters or sets of non-human characters, other than Aslan, we're going to come to Aslan in a second.
Yes.
Tumnus and the Beavers.
Mhm.
So Tumnus is a fawn.
Yes.
Which means that he has a human top half and like hooves
Yeah.
and like a hairy butt.
He's a goat man.
He's a goat man. And when he meets Lucy in the woods, so he's the first person that she meets when she kind of stumbles into Narnia for the first time. And he is wearing like a jacket and a shirt and a scarf.
No pants.
No pants.
Because, again,
it's hairy.
Goat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he says to her, would you like to come to my house and have tea? And she's like, yeah. Well, she's like, well, I should really go. And he's like, no, come with me. We later find out that he has actually been hired by the White Witch to kidnap any human child that he sees.
Mm-hmm.
So he's actually doing a bad, but then he makes up for it. But they cut to the shot of them in the house, and he has immediately removed his shirt because clearly, like, he doesn't wear
his shirt.
No, well, because clearly he doesn't wear a shirt, but he had worn like a jacket, like to go out.
Mm-hmm.
And the word I wrote down is truly grotesque. He's just really hairy
and naked.
And
he's
naked. And
yeah.
she's a child.
Mm-hmm.
She's a little child.
And he's just like a pasty British dude, and they've glued just so much hair.
So much hair.
But like not enough that it looks like fur.
Yeah.
It just looks like...
He looks like Robin Williams.
No, not even, because Robin Williams just looks like a really hairy guy.
Yeah.
This guy just looks like... Here's what it looks like. It looks like he has no hair on his body.
Right.
Someone covered him with glue stick, and then he went into like a hairdresser's and rolled around on the floor.
Oh.
It's unsettling.
It's unsettling. Unsettling is the word.
And it sucks because it totally distracts from a good actor.
Yeah.
His acting is fine.
He's doing his best.
But it's not worth talking about because he looks so weird.
It's so weird. It's so weird.
And I feel like this is a scene that you have to play really carefully because he's kidnapping.
Yes.
And then he hypnotizes her.
With music.
Yeah.
And she falls asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And then she wakes up and he's crying.
Mm-hmm.
And she has to comfort him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I feel really bad. I brought you here to do bad things to you. And now that I've met you, like, I know that you're not. They told me that humans were evil. And now that I've met you, I know that you're not. And I can't possibly give you to the White Witch. And he helps her escape.
Mm-hmm.
But then he pays the price, as we learn. He's turned to stone.
Yes.
Let's talk about the beavers.
Shall we?
Yes. So Jeremy told me something that he read online about these actors in these beaver costumes, which I found delightful. They had to have a beaver minder because the actors kept falling over and could not get back up again.
Mm-hmm.
So basically they're in, I would say, like giant egg-shaped beaver suits.
Yep.
And you can see their faces and just their hands and their feet. So not their arms or their legs, but just their hands and their feet. The effect is very strange. It's very hard to describe.
It just doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it comes down to.
I feel really bad criticizing it because it's 80s BBC.
And the actors, bless them, are doing their best.
Like, everyone gives it 100% in this, but yes, they look very silly.
It's very strange.
And they're enormous. That's the other thing, too. Like, all the animals in this show are huge. They're all people-sized.
Because they're played by people.
Yeah. But, like, some of them aren't. Like, okay, so there's Fenris Ulf. Okay, so this was something that was confusing because there's the wolf, who's the head of the guard.
Right.
And he's alternately named Fenris Ulf or Mogrim.
Right. Which are two different people.
No, they're not.
Okay.
In the British edition, it's Mogrim, and in the American edition of the book, it's Fenris Ulf.
Wait, seriously?
Yes.
Oh, it's very confusing.
Yeah. And so I got confusing in the movies and the shows because I think they were using different names, and I think we just assumed they were two different characters.
Yeah, I thought they were.
Anyway, like, he is occasionally a man in a wolf suit and also occasionally a wolf.
And there's like a transition between him being a wolf and being a man in a wolf suit that doesn't work super well.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the beavers are
And
weird.
Aslan is just a big puppet.
I think he was great.
Is a good puppet.
Great puppet.
Yeah.
Like, Aslan, I actually think worked perfectly because I'd seen all the pictures of it. And okay, so full disclosure, I definitely watched all these when I was a kid, but I didn't remember this one at all.
Yeah.
The only one I remember from all of these miniseries was the Silver Chair
Okay.
because it has that like weird like frog guy.
I don't think I remember seeing.
I remember.
Oh God, when you just said weird frog guy and it triggered something in me. Like, I think maybe I did see it.
Yeah, right? So I didn't remember Aslan. I didn't remember, does he walk around? Does he talk? Like, how does it work?
Right.
Then we're watching it and we see him standing. So I think, okay, they made a lion, but it is stationary.
Right.
Because it's a big lion.
No, but it walks around.
And it looked great.
Yeah.
It looked really, really
it looked
good.
like a really expensive, like if you go to FAO Schwartz and you see like the sort of realistic like stuffed animals, it looked like the centerpiece of something you would see at FAO Schwartz, like a very, very, very big lion with a beautiful mane, but clearly a stuffed animal, but like very good.
Yeah.
It's not like a realistic scary lion. It's like a very, very good puppet.
Yes.
Yes.
It's very, very like Henson Company.
Yeah.
Now, does he look good?
He usually looks okay.
Okay. Does he sound good?
Well, there's a point where he comes back to life, and in the book,
Yeah.
In the book, the description is it's like, stand back, children, for I'm going to roar. And he gives out the most magnificent roar.
Heard across all of the land.
That's right. I literally wrote down, that roar was nothing.
It's nothing.
It's nothing.
It's just rawr, rawr,
and then my
rawr.
and then he takes them and begins to fly. And I wrote, this is my note, flying Aslan. Oh no.
It's just it's unfortunate. It is like a pommel horse. It's just a
Is it better or worse than the Pegasus in A Wrinkle in Time?
the TV version?
The TV one, yeah.
Better.
I think it's better.
No, that's the worst thing I've ever seen. That's horrifying. This is just unfortunate.
It's not great.
So it's just two kids, the two little girls on the back of the stuffed lion in front of a green screen.
Yeah.
Flying above the land.
That's right.
It again, it's one of these things where they didn't have a great budget to work with.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Some stuff in this whole miniseries does work. This doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, I want to be clear that we really enjoyed watching this.
Oh, super fun.
When we came to the end of like the first half, I was like, oh, I really want, like, let's keep going. Like, I have 3 hours of this in me. I think most of the things we're going to end up talking about are the things we didn't like because that's funnier.
Right.
But it was enjoyable to watch from beginning to end.
Yeah.
Okay.
I came out of it not loving it.
That's fine.
Just
I
because
found it enjoyable to watch. For sure.
I found parts of it enjoyable, but I feel like constantly throughout the whole thing, the good things are undermined by the bad things.
Okay. So speaking of the bad things.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the non-human characters. Now I want to talk about the human or semi-human characters. Let's talk about the kids first.
Sure.
So there was some confusion in this version about which kid was eldest.
Uh-huh.
My suspicion is that they cast all the kids and then Susan hit puberty and Peter didn't.
Yeah.
Because she was very much clearly older. Except he's older.
Well, they're all the same age.
Lucy was younger.
No, except for Lucy, but
yeah. I actually think Edmund was younger too. Just Peter was 13 but hadn't hit puberty, and Susan was 12 and had.
But
I really think that was the problem.
But the problem is you've got these 4 kids standing there, and 3 of them look like they're exactly the same age.
Well, Susan
and they're all the same height.
No,
basically,
she was much taller and looked
which
older.
Is its own problem.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Like, but like, I actually don't think that's unrealistic. Like, if you look at like 7th and 8th graders, like there are 12-year-old girls that have hit puberty and 14-year-old boys that haven't. And that's what this looked like.
No, totally.
Yeah.
But if what you're trying to do is cast actors
I understand.
that show the progression of oldest to youngest,
this is fair.
This fails.
No, this is fair.
Yeah.
This is very fair.
I think, so as far as their acting goes.
Yes. I was charmed by Lucy.
Yes, I was charmed by Lucy as well.
Yes.
I think Lucy's very good. I think Peter is very good.
Yeah.
I think Edmund struggled a bit.
He may have done.
As did Susan.
I don't think they gave Susan anything to work with.
Yeah.
This may lead into the female characters a little underwritten.
I think it should.
Okay, so here's the deal. The thing in the original books that peeved me was that line that we've mentioned several times, battles are ugly when women fight. And in 1979, they did report that line faithfully, and I was mad. And in this one, now, full disclosure, I do not remember exactly what they said. I probably could have taken the time to write it down, but what I did write down was, appreciate restraint on battles are ugly when women fight. So I think he probably said something like battles are ugly things or something like that.
Yeah.
Like I don't believe it certainly didn't talk about women.
And it is Father Christmas, by the way.
It's still Father Christmas. And I'm just going to dip into 2005 briefly because I think the line in 2005 was battles are ugly when children fight. And I said, yes, that actually makes much more sense. If we're considering Peter to no longer be a child, because in 2005 he wasn't. He was a young man.
Right.
Anyway, we'll come to that in a second. I think of Susan as really one of the only female characters because the White Witch is not really a person. She's more of a caricature. And her femininity, the fact that she's a woman is really unimportant. And it's something I appreciate, actually. But there's nothing about that character. She's not treated any different. She's just evil. She just happens to be a lady and also is evil.
Mhm.
That was my reading of it. And Lucy's like a baby. But the thing about Susan is like she's like 12 or 13. She's kind of like in this sort of place between like childhood and womanhood, and like she doesn't come off great. And in subsequent books that we're not talking about, like basically the other kids can continue to get back to Narnia, but like Susan like becomes interested in boys and can't get into Narnia anymore. Like that's Susan's tragedy. And I just feel like Susan isn't given enough to do. Like her whole thing is like the present that she's given is something that allows her to call for help, not something that allows her to help herself. And I don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like the 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, the boys are given very stereotypically boy traits, and the girls are given very stereotypically girl traits. Like there's nothing about them as boys or as girls that like is interesting or that you wouldn't expect. Having said that, I don't think the female character is underwritten. Like they are given stuff to do, albeit, as I say, in stereotypical. Like at the end when they're adults, it's like Peter did many brave deeds and everyone wanted to marry Susan. Like that's pretty much what it says.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't think the witch is a female character who is very strong and stands in her power and speaks her truth. Like she's great, actually. You know, she's evil, but it's not because she's a lady. It's because she's evil, as I said before. So I think there are great, strong female characters in this book, just maybe not the children. So I'm going to come down on the side of the female character is not underwritten.
Cool.
That's my thinking.
Now, we've talked about these kids.
Yes.
And you have mentioned the White Witch.
Many times.
Let's talk about Barbara Kellerman.
Yes.
As the White Witch in this BBC version.
Do you want me to read my note?
Yes.
White Witch is a slice of honey glazed ham.
She
is in a different play.
Yep. She plays it very big.
Very big.
All the time.
All the time.
Never stopping.
Oh, God.
And this is one of those things, like, I don't blame the actor. I blame the director.
Yeah.
This is something where they clearly said, like, try something. Try
Yeah.
something. And then she did too much.
Yeah.
And they said, oh,
Great.
no, that's good.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah. Like what I said to you was, if I was the director, the thing that I would have said to her is like, you're up here all the time and I need to see some levels. Like I need you to earn that, you know, that top spot, that height that you get to. I need to see what comes beneath it so that when you get there, it's, you know, it's a bigger deal. But she's very over the top all the time about everything.
Mm-hmm. And the problem is, like, it makes her not scary.
Yeah.
She's ultimately comic the entire time.
Yeah.
She's a very silly character.
Yeah.
And because she's always playing everything at a 10, every single emotion is at a 10.
Yeah.
So, like, let's say part of the battle isn't going her way and she's a little worried.
Yeah.
Well, at a 10, that emotion is played as abject fear.
Right.
Like, so and it makes her silly.
Yeah.
Because you don't actually, it makes her very silly and
Yeah.
I don't care for it.
Yes, it's not great. Okay, I think we've gotten through everything that I wrote down.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else you want to say about this version?
They try to do a lot with very little.
They clearly had no budget.
None whatsoever.
Well, one of the things that I thought was hilarious. So one of the points in the book is that when the kids come out of the wardrobe, all 4 of them, they take the coats with them. They're wearing these fur coats from the wardrobe because it's cold. It's cold in Narnia. But I noticed that in this one, Edmund and Lucy had the coats on from the beginning. They didn't make much of a big deal or have any lines about it. They just had the coats on, which they don't in the book. Like, it's very clear nobody takes any coats until all 4 of them are there together. But it was clearly because they were actually out filming in a forest in the snow, and the children couldn't be out there just in normal clothing because they would be cold.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that just says so much about what their budget situation was, that like they had to kind of change the plot or how you would expect the visually how you would expect it to look or the children to be dressed, because there were practical considerations of like, these are actual children and we are actually in a forest and it is actually cold.
Mhm.
What were you going to say?
Well, I want to talk about world building.
Yes.
So this is another criticism that both I and Mr. Tolkien share
Oh, good.
about the Narnia books.
I'm glad that the two of you have come to some consensus.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where I always kind of felt this way, and then finding out that he felt the same way made me feel good.
Good.
Tolkien famously built amazing worlds.
Yes.
Very consistent worlds.
Yes.
His big criticism of C.S. Lewis is that he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And the worlds he built, Narnia's kind of all over the place. There's not a lot of consistency. It's kind of whatever magical beast he comes up with exists there. And it's not very cohesive.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're doing it as an adaptation, when you're doing it in live action or animation, you need to work harder to make it look cohesive because your source material isn't doing you any favors.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. I don't think the BBC version did a very good job at this. In fact, I think it kind of made things a little bit worse because, you know, you've got three different types of magical creatures in this world, all of whom look like they're in different movies.
Right.
So you've got some of them are people.
Right.
And their costumes, yeah, some of them are fawns like Tumnus. Some of them are just in leotards. And they're just people.
Right.
And then some of them are like animals in costume.
Right.
But they're the same size as the people and clearly dressed in paper
And
mache.
also sometimes actually animals. Like, remember there actually was
Yeah.
a beaver. Like, there was a shot of like a beaver and then it became Mr. Beaver.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like in the Little Prince, how the fox suddenly becomes Gene Wilder.
It's just like that. In
Yeah.
fact, it's just like that.
And then they also do animated characters.
Yep.
So this was actually something I was happy about because this is a great way to do something really cheap. But they have like griffins and flying creatures.
Right.
Basically, any flying creature was actually like hand-drawn animation superimposed on top of everything. And they looked cool, and it's a cheap way to do it. The problem is none of these characters can ever interact with each other because it looks stupid.
It looks really
Like
stupid.
an animated character can't interact with a person.
That's right.
Because it looks dumb.
That's right.
So it actually takes something that isn't cohesive and makes it even less cohesive.
Right.
So I actually think it's kind of worse in that regard.
Well, that's a shame.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about 2005?
Well, I'm glad we're talking about it because this is one where I actually think they did an improvement.
Good. So you said you saw this when it came out, right?
I went to go see this in the theater,
in
yeah.
2005. What was your impression of it then?
Didn't care for it.
And
Just didn't care for it. I walked out of it going like, okay, yeah, it's trying to be like Harry Potter and like The Lord of the Rings had just finished up like 2 years before.
Mhm.
And so I was like, no, I want to go see big magic stuff. And I liked Narnia when I was a kid, even though I have problems with it. And it's just like, it ended up doing nothing for me.
okay, so that was your impression years ago when the movie came out.
Yes.
Now, having read the book and rewatched the other two versions, what was your impression of it on this viewing?
Holy shit, I loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it. I loved every minute of
We
it.
both really liked it.
It blew me away.
Yeah.
I don't know what movie I saw then, but it did not hit me then. It hit me now.
Maybe you were just a more cynical person.
Maybe.
It's possible.
It's two things. Like there is a really good lack of cynicism in this movie
Yeah.
that I respond to now as an adult, like a 35-year-old man.
Yeah.
But it also makes really good changes that I didn't appreciate at the time because I didn't like read the book before I went to see the movie.
Yeah, I mean, literally, so I've been reading out a lot of my notes on this
Mhm.
episode. So my first note is in all caps, Peter hates Edmund. This one, you actually see them running to the bomb shelter from the Blitz
Mhm.
with their mom and all four kids, and their dad is clearly like at war.
Which is
And-
not so in the book. In the
No.
book, he's in London with their mom.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and their house is like literally being bombed and they're running into the bomb shelter, and Edmund, like, bless him, like he's running back. He wants to get the picture of their dad, like to save it from the bomb, and Peter has to run back and like grab him and pull him into the bomb shelter. So it's like not like that he was doing anything for himself so much. He was basically putting other people in danger to have to come to rescue him because he wasn't really thinking of how his actions were going to affect other people.
Mhm.
Foreshadowing. But then you see Peter in the bomb shelter screaming at him like, what is wrong with you? You never think of anyone else. Like, you're so selfish. And I just wrote, Peter hates Edmund. Like, Peter hates Edmund in every version. Even in the book, Peter hates Edmund.
Well, in the book, he's super dismissive of him.
Well, he says to him, the line that I like is like, you're always picking on people smaller and weaker than you. We've seen that at school before now. And like, it's like, yeah, Peter is the only person actually, if the two boys would have been at school together, he's the only person that actually has insight on how Edmund behaves with like his peers, right? And not within the family structure.
Yeah.
And so clearly the idea is that the mother, because of this episode, the mother realizes the kids are in danger, and she gets them into this program that all of these kids are being taken out of the city. And so the next time we see them, they're like on the train platform, like saying goodbye and all crying and like the train pulling away. And the other thing I wanted to mention really quickly about this scene is Peter in this version is a little bit older. He's probably 16, if not 17, because he sees the young men going to war. Like he sees them also on the train platform, and he's pretty much the same age. He sees these boys his own age, like in uniform.
Almost like he's almost old enough to go.
Old enough, but instead he's being sent off with the children
to the country.
To the country, and you clearly see that this is like hard for him. But my note, so their mother is putting them on the train, and like they're basically pretty sure they're never going to see each other again. And my note is Jeremy is already crying.
It was a thing I didn't appreciate at the time.
Yeah.
But I think the script for this movie does more in the first 5 minutes to actually build these characters to be people you care about and understand than C.S. Lewis did in the book at all.
Yeah.
Or ever happened in the cartoon or the miniseries.
Yeah, and the age range of them is much larger. So like as I say, Peter is much older. And Lucy is only 6.
Yeah.
She's little.
She's tiny.
She's a baby. She's so cute.
She's really, really cute. But like the thing that made me cry is that I've basically spent my whole life of reading this book, growing up with it, watching the show. Anytime Edmund came up, he's a shit. Like Edmund is a shit. And why? Because.
Right.
And the thing is, he needs to be a shit so that C.S. Lewis can tell a story about someone sinning and then being forgiven.
That's right.
And then another character dying for that person's sin.
Yeah.
And then he is forgiven. He needs to fill that part of the story, so he doesn't need to be a character.
Yeah.
Edmund's never been sympathetic for decades, and now suddenly I'm seeing this movie, and you're showing me a little kid who did something stupid because he's a kid who loves his father.
Right.
And now his older brother is yelling at him. And he's going through childhood, and he's confused, and he's scared, and he's angry, and London's being bombed. And for the first time, I feel like I got Edmund.
And he misses his dad.
Yeah.
Like, that's Edmund's whole arc. And this is like, my dad might die. Like, my dad is at war. Like, it's clearly hitting him harder or in a different way than the rest of the kids. Like you just think like, oh, Edmund is the one that's close to his dad. Like, the other 3 are close to their mom, and Edmund's close to his dad. Like, it's very odd. Like, there's not specific dialogue about it, but that was what I got from it, that like he's just really fucked up right now because his dad is at war, right?
Yeah. Edmund's arc, and I'm sure like in the next little bit we'll talk about more things about his arc.
Yeah.
Edmund's arc is my favorite thing the movie does because it's so unlike the book.
Yeah.
And it gives us so much more.
Yeah.
Can I say one quick thing about like how this movie was written?
Yeah.
So it was directed by a guy named Andrew Adamson.
Okay.
He also directed Shrek and Shrek 2.
Oh.
This was his first live action movie.
Oh, that's nice.
So he also co-wrote the script. He wrote it based on a 20-page treatment that he wrote, not having reread the book since he was a kid.
Oh, okay.
So he said, I loved it when I was a kid. I remember it. So I'm going to write the story that I see based on what I remember of it.
Yeah.
And it turned out there was stuff he wrote that didn't really happen in the book. So like he remembered seeing the Blitz in the book.
Which isn't there.
It's not there. How does his movie start? What is the opening shot?
It's like inside like a plane.
Like German bombers over London.
Yeah.
And that's why the whole beginning of the movie starts out with so much of the war.
Yeah.
Because he remembered that. He also remembered the battle. this really big battle.
Which is really not in the book at all.
Barely,
Yeah.
because the entire time the battle is happening, you know it's happening, but you're with Susan and Lucy and Aslan.
Right.
And then they go to the battle.
Right.
And then they end the battle.
Right.
But in this one, the battle is in it.
Yeah.
And it's like Lord of the Rings style.
Right.
You see both sides of the battle amassing against each other. And you see Peter preparing for battle. And you see Edmund preparing for battle. And when Aslan and Susan and Lucy have to join them, like the battle is happening. People are dying.
Right.
And that was because he remembered that happening in the book, even though it wasn't there. So this diverges in a lot of ways from the book. And I think it makes it stronger in almost every respect.
Right, because basically what you're seeing is someone that didn't feel, from what you just described, and this is new to me, but like that makes a lot of sense. Like it's someone that didn't feel beholden to tell the story word for word exactly as it appears. It's someone who's saying, I'm going to concentrate on the things that spoke to me. That is actually a really interesting exercise. Like I read this so long ago and I'm going to write down what I remember. And clearly those are the things that spoke to me.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting.
Yeah. Which is why, and I think that leads to, maybe I should wait, but I'm not going to. Like the thing that I responded to most in the movie now is, again, I've spent all of these years kind of feeling like I was being pushed away by the allegory in the book.
Yeah.
The movie is not precious with the allegory at all.
Yeah.
And it kind of undermines the allegory in a number of ways.
Yeah, because if you're not someone that's into the allegory, it has any number of other ways for you to get into it. Because the whole thing is the kids have to go on this journey. In the book and in the other versions, they hear about this prophecy. They're like, okay, yeah, no, that we're here. Yeah, let's do it. And in this, it's this big struggle of like, oh, for all of them, for Peter and Susan, I think particularly, Lucy's just a baby.
Yeah.
But for both of them, it's like, oh no, you have the wrong guy. This is not, no. Like for kids, it's not us. We're
Right.
just here to find our brother. Like I think in the book, once the character of Aslan is introduced, it's like, oh, we got to meet Aslan. We got to meet Aslan. This is like, no, where's our fucking brother? We got to get our brother and go. Like this is not where we want to be. We have a mother that we love and care about. We have a family. Like we do not want to be here.
Yeah. Like the most that happens, like Peter, he eventually comes to the point where he says, no, I'm going to stay and fight.
That's right.
But you've all got to go.
You got to go. He says to Susan, take them and go. I feel like I have a responsibility here, but I want you guys to all leave. And then they're all like, no, but the prophecy. It's this journey. They all go on a journey. Every single one of the kids has a pretty substantial arc.
Oh yeah. And that's my favorite thing that it does change is, again, it's all about Edmund.
Yeah.
So again, in the book, Edmund is a shit for no reason other than he needs to be. He betrays his siblings and basically all of Narnia. And then he's captured by the White Witch. Eventually he gets away, gets back to them and Aslan. He has a conversation with Aslan we never hear about. Like we hear about it, but we never hear it.
Yeah.
And afterwards, Aslan says to the kids, he knows what he did and don't speak of it anymore. He has been forgiven.
Right.
And then we find out that he knows he needs to sacrifice himself because Edmund's a sinner.
Right.
So basically, Edmund doesn't even really know the gravity of what he's done until Aslan tells him the gravity of what he did.
Right.
And we never even hear it. In the movie, would you say that Edmund realizes the gravity of what he's done?
Almost immediately.
Like, not only almost immediately, but it gets worse and worse and deeper before he even meets Aslan.
Oh, God. Yeah, no, he shows up at the White Witch's house and she immediately makes him a prisoner.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, oh, this is bad.
And who does he get to meet?
He meets Tumnus.
Yeah.
He meets Tumnus and Tumnus is like, yeah, you fucked up, dude.
Yeah. And so this is something that never happens in the book because Tumnus, we never even see him until the end.
He's turned to
Like,
stone.
they-
Well, he watches Tumnus get turned to stone.
Yeah.
And he's like, shit, this is bad.
And that's my favorite thing is that Edmund, as a character, is allowed to understand the gravity of what he's done. He doesn't need the quote unquote savior telling him what he's done is bad and forgiving him.
Right.
He knows it's bad.
He knows.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I wanted to mention, kind of going back to what we were saying before about the other kids having this arc and like not being 100% bought into this whole prophecy thing, is that the movie very nearly ends about halfway because they get to the beaver's house. The beavers are explaining to them the prophecy and Peter says no. We're not doing that. We are leaving. We are leaving right now. And they stand up to go, and Edmund's not there. So the only reason they continue on with the beavers is because Edmund fucked off to go talk to the queen. If he had waited 5 minutes, the movie would have ended.
Yeah.
They're not bought in. They just want their brother back.
And in the book, they just assume that Edmund is with the White Queen.
Yeah.
The White Witch.
The White Witch, yeah.
But in the movie, what do they see?
They don't know where they're running around screaming like Edmund, and they see him go into her house and they start to run after her, and Mr. Beaver stops him and he's like, "You are crazy. This is a trap. If you go in there, you're all gonna die. She's gonna kill you. Like the stakes are very high here." And he's explaining this to them. He's like, "We have to go find Aslan. That's the only thing we can do. You cannot do anything else." They're like, "All right, I guess we have to. Like, this doesn't seem right, but we're going to go."
So I feel like we've kind of skirted this a little bit, but
Okay.
I want to talk about, I mentioned before the whole idea of building a world,
Right.
and how I think this movie is an improvement on the book. Well, let's just get out of the way. Do you feel like the world of this movie was more of a cohesive whole?
Yes. Consistency. There was
Yeah.
consistency. For example, there weren't people in beaver costumes.
Yeah, well, that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. So I feel like there are two things that made this work so much better. One, I think it was created by people that cared about making it consistent.
Yes.
I think the crew was very talented. It's not like it's easy enough to say all the people that made Lord of the Rings also made this. There's a lot of crossover between the crew that made Lord of the Rings and the crew that made the Narnia movies.
Yeah, so just to be clear, like the animals are all like CGI with human voices. I don't know if they did like motion capture or just like plain old CGI.
Animation, good old-fashioned animation with human voices.
But it looks fine.
But that's the other thing is finally technology has caught up to the point where you can do a world like this.
Yeah, like the beavers were beaver sized.
Yeah. Like I almost imagine with the BBC one, if Aslan was a giant puppet, maybe they could have gone like full Henson and actually made the animals puppets.
Yeah, maybe they just didn't have the budget for it.
But I feel like that's less. I think that's lower budget to make the beavers like hand puppets.
Yeah, but then you have to design the whole set around the fact that they're puppets. In this, do you know what I mean? Like,
I guess so.
You have to have like an up and a down so that like the puppeteers can be hidden. Like, I think that's more complicated.
I just wonder how the budget works out, which is more expensive, and I'm literally making scales with my hands. Like bringing the floor up 3 feet so you can have puppeteers, and hiring beaver wranglers to make sure the actors don't roll over.
Who can say?
But the technology has finally caught up. So, like, what do the beavers look like?
They look like beavers.
And what does Aslan look like?
A lion.
Right? All the animals, yeah, it's like 2005 CG. It's not perfect. Things have gotten better, but, like, they look pretty damn good.
They look fine.
Yeah. And we actually get to see them as characters, and we're not distracted by
beaver suits.
What'd you think of the beavers in this one?
They had like really good personalities.
Yeah.
Mr. Beaver was really funny.
There's a part with Mr. Beaver that Mr. Beaver made me cry.
Yeah.
Because
because of his friend.
Yeah.
Because of his friend Mr. Badger.
Well, there's the whole thing in the book where they kind of there's a bunch of animals and like a fawn around a table, and they're like, "Hey, the snow's melting and everything's
they
great."
were visited by Father Christmas. That's why they were celebrating, and he gave them wine.
And then the White Witch shows up and turns them all to stone. And that kind of happens separately from the kid's journey.
Kind of, yeah.
But in this one, everything is much more compressed and there's a lot more action in it. Like it's not just, a thing happens here. Let us walk to the next scene.
Right.
There's like action happening. And they come upon all of these animals that have been turned to stone already.
Yeah.
And the only one who hasn't is Mr. Fox.
Right.
Who's reasonably fantastic.
Yeah.
He's not super fantastic.
He's all right.
Yeah.
This is not in the book, that there's like a fox that distracts the White Queen and all of this stuff.
Right. The fox is in the book, but that stuff isn't.
Yeah.
But when they see all the stone animals, like Beaver has already been talking about his best friend Badger.
Yeah.
And they come out and Badger's been turned to stone, and Beaver has this moment where he just says, like, he was my best friend.
Yeah.
And he's so sad.
He's so sad.
And it's such a real, beautiful moment. And that's the thing I love about the movie, is that it gives you these real, like, beautiful moments that have absolutely nothing to do with the allegory.
That's right.
They stand on their own, and you can experience them regardless of how Aslan dies for sins and comes back to life.
That's right.
So that's part of it. I thought the creatures all looked great.
They looked great. I loved the costumes. They had some great knitwear, very cozy. But one of the things that I really liked about it was that at the point that the kids meet Aslan, they give them like fairy tale costumes, which means they're not fighting the battle in their school uniforms, which is what happens in the 1988 one.
Yeah.
And it looks a little stupid when Peter's in like his short pants and like blazer fighting and like high knee socks, like fighting in a battle.
Right.
They give them like medieval dresses for the girls and like Crusades soldier outfits for the boys.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they need armor.
They need armor. They're not fighting in their knitwear.
Mm-hmm.
But there's amazing knitwear in this movie if you are a fan of that, which I am.
What do you think of the White Witch's costumes?
Very weird, but she's very weird.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it worked.
Yeah.
It made her look like she had more like she's wearing like sleeveless dress or like strapless dress, but like it was built out so that her chest looked a lot bigger. Not her breasts, but her chest. Does that make sense?
It just made her imposing.
It made her very imposing.
Mm-hmm.
Should we talk about who plays this character?
Let's hold off for a minute.
All right,
we'll
that's
get
fine.
to the cast.
Okay.
We'll talk about all these actors soon.
Okay.
But I thought the creatures all looked great, and that I think leads me to like the denouement of the movie, which again, it's in the book but barely.
Mm-hmm.
The final battle.
Yeah.
Again, in the book, it's there, but we don't really get to see very much of it. In the movie, you see the prep, you see them facing off on the plains against each other. You see the battle at every stage.
Yes.
And you see all of these creatures. And yes, on one side, it's a combination of animals and centaurs and fawns. They all look super consistent.
Yeah.
This looks like the creatures of a world.
Yes.
And all of the evil creatures, like it's not just like they're not orcs and goblins. They're definitely creatures that look different.
Yes.
And also look of a whole.
Yes.
On the other side.
Yes. And nobody in this movie says battles are ugly when women fight. Because there's some fucking badass lady centaurs that are super cool. And I don't remember what she did, but I wrote in all caps, "Go Susan." I think she killed somebody.
Well, no, Susan actually gets to use her bow and arrow.
And like use it like as a weapon.
Yeah, she's really badass
Yeah,
in it.
yeah.
I love the battle.
Yeah.
The whole thing is, again, in the book, like stuff happens because it needs to, and none of it really has anything to do with character. So the White Witch, the entire time the battle is happening, is turning people to stone.
Yeah.
And every time people attack her, they never break her wand.
Right.
And Edmund's the first one to say, "Oh, wait a second.
If we break her wand.
Well, I got, you know, guys, I got a thought. Hang on one second. I'm gonna go follow this to its conclusion."
This is right.
And he goes and breaks her wand, and he gets injured. And then Aslan shows up and kills her.
Yes.
And Edmund is hurt.
Yes.
And then Lucy gives him some potion and he feels better.
Yes.
So in the movie, it is much more intense than that.
Right.
Like every time the witch turns someone to stone, it is harrowing.
Oh, it's painful. Like,
Yeah.
like they all are frozen with like extremely pained expressions on their faces.
And when Edmund realizes that he needs to destroy her wand, he doesn't just march up and do it. He goes up to her and tries to do it and doesn't because she's a goddamn witch and an adult, and they actually have a real fight. And he gets mortally wounded.
Yeah.
Like in order to break it, he has to get mortally wounded.
That's right.
The stakes are so much higher.
That's right.
And we've gone through this whole story with this kid and seen him grow. His sacrifice means so much more.
Yeah. Yes. Well, so one of the things that this movie sort of made me change my mind on. So in the book, so Edmund is wounded, and Lucy has this cordial that will heal any wounded person, and she runs up to Edmund. They're all back at the battle, and Peter says, we have to go see Edmund. He's hurt. He's badly hurt. And Lucy brings out her cordial and pours a couple drops on his lips or whatever. And she's sitting there waiting for him to come around. And Aslan says to her, "Lucy, there are more people wounded. Like, come on, you've got this potion." And she kind of snaps at him and says, "Yeah, hang on a second." And he gets very stern with her and says, "Lucy, how many more people must die for Edmund?" And she says, "Oh God, yeah, you're right."
And he's including himself.
And I always liked that moment. Like, I always kind of liked that little reminder of like what this battle was all about. But then we saw the 2005 one and they didn't have that exchange. And I remember thinking like, God, yeah. So Lucy, a small girl, a 7-year-old girl whose only sin is, I want to make sure my brother's not dead, has to be rebuked by Aslan. Like she's not allowed. That's not okay. Like that's wrong of her to want to make sure her brother's okay. I felt like in the 2005 one, the reason that you would have thought that that was unreasonable for Aslan to ask of her is that Edmund was actually a fully fleshed out character. So we, the audience, actually care what happens to him. And it made him chastising her in the other versions and in the book seem very unreasonable.
Like heartless.
Which I think is all down to the fact that these kids, you really cared about them as human beings and people and not just as symbols. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah. So we mentioned the White Queen before, or the White Witch. Do you want to talk about who plays this character in the 2005 version of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe?
Yes. In order to do that, I want to tell a story.
Okay. Yes.
So one day, you and I were driving into Manhattan.
Yes.
And I was saying to you, we were just having a conversation about how, it's funny, like so many celebrities live in Manhattan. And you don't just like see them walking around all the time.
And we'd been stuck in traffic forever, and we had just gotten to the point where we could make like the left turn off of the West Side Highway. So like we had been sitting in the car talking about this for quite some time.
Yeah, and it's just a conversation.
Yeah.
And then suddenly...
So we're talking about like seeing celebrities in their natural habitat or whatever. And we've just turned on to, I don't know, like 58th Street or something. And Jeremy kind of looks over to his right and says, "Hey babe, turn to your right." And I look over and I go, "Oh, it's Tilda Swinton." Who was wearing, by the way, I believe a gold lame jumpsuit.
Yes.
And then we continued down the street and there she was on a billboard. Like she was like advertising something. It was crazy. We had just seen her walking down the street. She's very distinctive looking.
Yes.
In her personal appearance. But that was our encounter with Tilda Swinton. We saw her walking down the street dressed in an amazing manner.
She is just a stunning, amazing person.
Yeah.
I love Tilda Swinton.
Yeah.
She's so fucking good in this movie.
Yeah. Well, what I wrote down was that like the other versions of the White Witch, like she's immediately, instantly, and constantly incredibly evil.
Yeah.
But in this, like, it's more like the book, which is that she's very nice to Edmund at first, because otherwise why would he like her and want to come back and be with her? Like we're given to understand that she enchants him a little bit, but like she's very sweet to him and she makes him feel seen, which he doesn't, like that's his problem. Like he feels very put upon.
Right.
And she gives him things that he wants and she makes him promises and she's not scary to him because if she were scary, he wouldn't want to come back. And then afterwards, she's very scary.
Right. And he sees that.
Yes.
And that thing you were talking about before where you say, like, you've got to show me, like, a 2 or a 3 before you show me a 10.
This is right. Yes.
She does that.
Yes, because she gets to a 10, but she's not at a 10 the whole time.
When she gets scary, she's terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, for a kid.
Yeah.
I think she's so good in it.
Yes.
She's great.
Side note, I believe we have mentioned this actor on the podcast before. The actor who plays her dwarf is Kieran Shah from The Lord of the Rings, and he actually gets some lines, which good for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's really good in it.
He's great.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the professor?
He's an actor I've never seen before.
Yeah, right.
He's not adorable and wonderful at all.
Okay.
Jim Broadbent.
He's great.
He's so good.
He's so good. He's so sweet. He gets like the last little scene of the movie. We haven't even really talked about the professor before because they haven't really been that impressive or made an impression, I guess. But he gets a lot more screen time, I think, than the other professors.
What do you think of the kids?
Well, we talked about this a little bit before. I liked the way that they spread their ages out a little bit more, which I think makes sense. I thought all of their acting was really good. I've said this now like 6 times. The girl who plays Lucy is just adorable.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is we noticed when they're grown up at the end, the actor playing like adult Lucy or teenage Lucy, we're like, wow, they really found an actor that looked like her. And I was like, that's got to be her sister. There's no way. And you looked it up and it is her sister, her older sister.
Yeah. Yeah, older sisters factored heavily into this because old Lucy is played by her older sister.
That's right.
Also, so Edmund, the actor, he's got such a cool name, Skander Keynes.
Ooh.
So one of the things they tried to do is they shot the movie chronologically to kind of show the kids maturing.
Yeah.
His voice broke
Oh, no.
halfway through shooting. So in the second half of the movie, a lot of his lines were looped by his sister,
Yeah.
his younger sister.
If you know that, you can hear it a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is not his fault.
No.
Totally
It
fine.
was just a fun little Easter egg to look out for.
Yeah. Voices in this movie. Okay, I want to say my favorite part.
Okay.
This delighted me. I don't know why it did nothing for me at the time, but it is my favorite part. But like at one point, Edmund is on the back of a horse and he's being a little shitty to the horse because
Yeah.
it's like an animal. And the horse turns around to look at him and just starts talking. And he's like, my name's Philip.
Well, he says, come on, boy. And the horse is like, don't call me boy. My name's Philip.
And it's so good. The voice is one of the producers of the movie.
Whose name is Philip.
Whose name is Philip. And then like Philip shows up at the end when they're all adults too. It's so great.
And he's old.
I love it.
It's great.
I love moments like that. I want to say a quick thing about James McAvoy
Okay.
as Tumnus.
Oh, he's very good. Yeah, we didn't mention him.
James McAvoy is one of these people. He's come up on the show before, and he's one of these people. I feel like every time he's in something, he'll do whatever the director tells him to do.
Yes.
He is a blank slate
Mm-hmm.
that is capable of delight.
Yes. And I will say he managed to be shirtless around children without being creepy.
Yeah, which
I don't
was
know
good.
how he managed to do that, but he did.
I think it's because he's a really, really good actor.
Well, and also like he was shirtless from the beginning, so there was no implication that he had removed his clothing
I think that's the difference.
once he got the kid into his house.
But also, like the scene he has where he's hypnotizing Lucy, it's so much less creepy because it happens much quicker. And it is so clear that what he's doing is wrong.
Yeah.
And he knows it's wrong. And he stops it very, very soon.
Yeah.
Like he starts doing it and then stops. And it's great. It's a really, really, really good moment.
Yeah.
I think he's great in it. Should we talk about the big man?
The man himself.
Yep.
The lion. The one. The only. Aslan.
What do you think of Liam Neeson in this?
I mean, he's fine. He's good.
Yeah.
Like he's a lion.
Right.
My favorite note that I wrote down was like when when Aslan is like dead and lying there on the stone table and the girls are like on top of him and crying. I was like, girls, he's going to be fine. Have you not heard the good news about Jesus?
And that's the thing that bugs me about all the other ones is like these little girls watch him get beaten and killed.
Yes.
And they just sit there and watch it and cry.
Yes.
Because of course they just sit there and watch it and cry.
Right.
And in this one, they like are more active
Mhm.
and they're actively like holding themselves back.
Yeah. Well, and also the witch and all of the scary people are very scary.
Yeah.
So there's no thought that like they could do anything about it because they're terrifying and there's hundreds of them.
Mhm.
Whereas I feel like in previous versions, like it's not as impressive.
Yeah. The other thing that happens in the other versions and in the book is after Aslan dies, the little girls, everything they're talking about is just how sad it is.
Yeah.
Whereas in the movie, they spend a lot more time with the cold corpse of Aslan.
They do spend a lot of time with him.
No, but because it's one of the things they're talking about is what they're going to do.
That's right.
They're planning what their next move is and saying like, is this still going to work? Or have we lost all hope? What's going to happen with the battle? We have to get back to the battle. And then Aslan comes back.
Right.
And so their story, their experience of the world doesn't completely revolve around this lion.
Right, because my understanding is that like there were the way that the allegory had to work was that there were two women that stayed up all night with Jesus's body, I think,
I
before
think
he came back
so.
to Mary Magdalene maybe was one of them. Not totally sure. But like
We joke about doing no research. We did a good amount of research.
I didn't
This was-
research Jesus.
I didn't think to do that.
I didn't do that. But it's like he had to just have them wait there until morning because that's what happened in the allegory.
Mhm.
And I think you're right that the director was trying to find ways for them to be a little more active and not just sitting there for no reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the cast is fantastic. I think it's a great movie.
Yeah.
It was super weird. Like I didn't care for it when I first saw it. Came out of it crying multiple times.
Oh,
Loved it.
I have two different notes. Jeremy is already crying, and then later I wrote Jeremy is crying again.
Yep. It just totally did it for me. And it wasn't because they removed the allegory. It's because they downplayed the allegory, expanded on the characters, and actually gave me things to experience.
They provided more than one way in.
Like it took me a while to figure out why I reacted so strongly to it, but it was because it was the only version of this story I have ever experienced since I was a kid where I felt like I was being included in the story and not being excluded from the story.
That's right.
So I loved it.
Great. Let's do our quadrants. Let's wrap this up.
Cool.
All right.
Okay, so let's go back to 1979.
Yes.
Do you think Bill Melendez and his animators care deeply about Chronicles of Narnia and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe?
No, I don't think
didn't-
so.
I didn't see anything that gave me that impression.
No.
Like,
No, I think they were hired to do a job.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they did
Bad job.
like, it's not that good.
It's not very good.
I don't think it's successful.
Okay.
I think it's okay for little kids, but it's ultimately, I think it's unsuccessful.
I'm with you on that.
1988.
I'm having a hard time with this one because I
Yeah.
found it enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just listen to the part where we talked about it, we didn't say anything good.
We said, what are you talking about? We said good stuff
we
about
said,
it.
We literally said we're only going to talk about bad stuff, but we did find it enjoyable.
You said that.
How do you feel about its successfulness?
Well, do you think they cared?
I do.
You
I do
think
think they
so?
cared. Yes, I do. I think they
Yeah.
were working with what they had, but I do think they cared.
It's funny. I think their caring about the source material comes out more as the BBC making an adaptation of a classic British work
Yes.
of literature.
Yes.
I think they cared about it being British
Yes.
way more than they cared about the story or the allegory.
That's fair. Yeah.
But I do think they cared
No,
about
I,
it.
I do too.
It's a very loving adaptation. It's
Yeah.
like lovingly crafted, just with $5.
Yeah.
Sorry, pounds.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I do think that this is important. This is like a very, as you say, like a very British work that we would like to get right as the BBC.
Yeah. I feel that if I say that it's unsuccessful, I am implying that every other low-budget BBC miniseries from the 70s and 80s was also unsuccessful,
Yeah.
and I'm not willing to do that.
I'm not willing to say it was unsuccessful because I really enjoyed watching it.
Mhm.
Like, I feel like that has to be important to whether or not something's successful. Did you like it? Yes, I liked it.
I did too.
Yes.
Cool.
Great.
Yeah.
Successful.
Let's talk about this movie.
Yes.
I think they cared.
Yeah.
Like,
As you say, like
Yeah.
from the way you described the way the director approached it, I think
Mhm.
he really cared.
Mhm. I came out of it really, really wanting to watch because they did Voyage of the Dawn Treader
Yeah,
and
we'll
Prince
wa-
Caspian.
we'll watch
I
them.
really want to watch
We
those
will.
now.
Yeah.
I think he cared, and I don't think it's any surprise to say that we think it's successful.
Great. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this has been Adapter Parish. If you'd like to find us online, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at AdaptCast. And if you tweet about the show, don't forget to use the AdaptCast hashtag. You can join our groups on Facebook and Goodreads, and you can also find and follow me on Letterboxd. If you have anything to say that's longer than a tweet, you can always send an email to adapterparishcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, there are two great ways you can do it. First, tell a friend. Second, a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice would be greatly appreciated.
And I just want to be clear, if you find yourself in a room with a large wardrobe, leave the door open. Because as everyone knows, it is very foolish to shut oneself into any wardrobe.
It just reminds me of the episode of Punky Brewster where she shut herself inside a fridge.
Yep, but then she almost died.
Bye, everybody.
Bye!